Hi, my name is Peter Knegt, and I am here with Billy Eichner, the writer and star of the new film Pros, which is world premiering at the Toronto Film Festival and then is being released in theaters across North America on September 30th. Welcome, Billy.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on the film. I saw it
you.
last night. I'm actually seeing it again tonight,
Oh,
so
wow.
twice in 24 hours. It's so good.
Thank you.
And I have to say, I was a little nervous, not just for you, but for all of us as gays.
Yeah, I get it.
But as a queer person, watching this and seeing that, with the exception of a few cameos that I shouldn't name, everyone in this movie is gay.
Yeah, well, LGBTQ.
LGBTQ, sorry, yes, LGBTQ.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you're
That's what I
canceled.
intended. I'm canceled, I'm sorry. But it was like kind of emotional to see that in a movie like this.
It is.
And I just wondered, I think we've become so accustomed as queer people to see straight people play us. Like, do you feel this is like the beginning of the end for this? Like, finally, like we are getting somewhere?
Oh, yeah. I mean, things have really evolved. My character is speaking to his experiences over the past 20 years. I didn't waltz into the entertainment industry 5 years ago when things started to change. I started out in comedy in New York over 20 years ago. It was a much different environment to be an openly gay man in comedy, especially someone like me who I was never apologetic about it. I was always really forthright and really bold and really loud and, just kind of was who I was. But the entertainment industry at large was not nearly as welcoming as it is now. So I definitely think things are changing, and hopefully we get more major studio releases like this, which speak to the experiences of every part of the community. And I hope in a comedic way and in a joyful way, and not just stories about how we're tortured and struggling and closeted and, which has largely been the types of stories about LGBTQ people that Hollywood, especially mainstream Hollywood, likes to tell.
There's a scene in the movie where your character, Bobby, who is a historian, podcaster, journalist, a whole bunch of things, talks very candidly about how difficult it's been for him to get queer stories told and how hard that journey's been for him, and to make people realize that there's an audience for them and that they matter. So has that resonated with you as an artist, I assume?
Yeah, I mean, that part of the movie is very much drawn from my own experience. I mean, I'm not a historian or a podcaster, shockingly, actually. But yeah, I had many experiences like that over the years in the entertainment industry and different parts of the industry. It's just kind of something that kept popping up, and sometimes overtly, sometimes in more subtle ways. But yeah, I mean, I always chose to forge ahead anyway, which my character does too. But, those are still real obstacles, in terms of like various people over the years saying, oh, it's too gay or it's too this or it's too that, and worried about whether straight people will find you relatable or even interesting or valid. And so, yeah, that was very challenging to navigate over the years, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of obstacles, this seems like a big one to come over.
It is, yeah. I mean, every artist, every creative person has different obstacles, a lot of rejection, no matter whether you're straight, gay, queer. But yeah, it's a particularly frustrating one when people are telling you directly or even just implying that, well, there's going to be a ceiling to your success in entertainment because you've been so open about who you are. Like, you're not going to be able to star in major movies or play every role that a straight actor might be able to play or be asked to play because you sleep with other guys. Like, it really came down to that, and it always felt so silly to me on some level, just absurd. Like, why that? Like, if you don't think I'm talented, that's one thing. If you don't think I'm funny, that's one thing. But I'm not going to be considered, or I'm not going to get to sell my script or my book or whatever it is because I sleep with guys. Like, it's so odd when you think about it. And yet, that was a very real thing.
Yeah, and speaking of sleeping with guys, there's a lot of gay sex in this movie. Probably the most that is ever going to be released on 3,000 scrines nationwide ever.
That's probably true.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And it was messy. It sometimes was boring. I appreciated how it was, comically theatrical and cold sometimes, as someone who also experiences gay sex on a regular basis. What were you trying to express with the sex, like, and with sort of portraying it in that way?
I thought, it's a Judd Apatow movie above all. And Judd's made some of the funniest movies of all time. He produced Bridesmaids and 40-Year-Old Virgin, and Nick Stoller, who directed it, made Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Neighbors and all these very funny, very popular movies. And those movies deal with sex You know, there are funny sex scenes in those movies, things involving the human body, and you know, that's part of it. So part of it was just like we wanted to find really explosively funny physical comedy, right? And those are things everyone can relate to. We've had so many straight women, young straight women, watch Bros, and even though the sex scenes are with two guys, we've had so many women who say like, I've been in that position, right?
Yeah.
The awkwardness, like the, you know, not knowing the person, the one night stand, like not knowing how vulnerable to be, all of that stuff. So on one level, it was just funny and relatable. On the other level, I did think that the sex would help tell the story, you know, because when you're single, you're having a certain type of sex. And when you're in a serious relationship that's getting more intimate, where that's getting more romantic and you're becoming more vulnerable, the sex changes too. And so I thought it was important to show all of that because it's part of life and it's part of dating and it's part of, you know, being in a relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And I also like, you know, Bros does not pander to a straight audience. It's probably going to make some people uncomfortable, but who cares? But what I did find really interesting is I think it's going to make a lot of gay men a little uncomfortable because it does sort of delve into, with Bobby and Aaron, who are both cis gay men in their early 40s, in terms of like the issues they have, which are very different, but with toxic masculinity. And I kept thinking about this article that came out when that show Looking aired. It was called like The New Gay Sadness, and it talked about this generation of gay men that I think we both belong to that sort of were too young to take someone to the prom, but too old to fantasize about escaping to like, you know, 70s utopia or whatever.
Right.
And how much that really messed them up, and how now, and I think this movie speaks to this brilliantly, cis white gay men are sort of the most privileged of you know, and now all of a sudden we have all these rights. So I was just wondering, like, in terms of negotiating these kinds of dynamics, and also because, like, you know, politically, that's the demographic that sort of, quote unquote, is least in need of representation. How you negotiate all that, because I feel like it came across really brilliantly, and I was really appreciated that.
I'm glad. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You know, we don't get many movies like this. And there's a weird pressure on Bros, which is really just meant to be a funny romantic comedy. But because we get so few of these and so few of them that are produced at this scale and marketed this much, and with the sort of wide release that we're getting, there's a unique pressure, perhaps an unfair, kind of irrational, illogical pressure creatively to reflect every single corner of what is a very eclectic community, right? And honestly, that would be impossible to do. Also, it's a comedy, and it's only a 1 hour and 45-minute movie, so it would be impossible to do that with any detail or nuance. And ultimately, I wanted to do two things. I wanted the movie to be honest. I can only write, it's my first movie script. I co-wrote it with Nick Stoller, and I wanted it, the only thing I know how to write is sort of, you know, my own story at this point. And so I don't have, you know, I only have the life experience really to write about what I know. And for better or worse, I'm a cis white gay man, and that's who I am. And so I'm using this opportunity to tell my story. I do hope and think it's an interesting, funny, compelling one. At the same time, you know, I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't just using this as a selfish platform for myself, and it was really important for me to take as many LGBTQ actors as we could, and there are so many talented ones that have never gotten opportunities to be in movies like this, and to give them an opportunity to shine too. And the whole cast is openly LGBTQ. They come from different corners of the community, different generations. We have everyone in this movie from Harvey Fierstein, who reflects like the really early groundbreaking generation of openly gay writer-actors, to Bowen Yang, who like represents like, you know, the new queer comedy movement of people who are like really breaking out and like showing the world like everything that we're capable of. And so, you know, we were trying to balance those two things, and, you know, ultimately we just wanted to make an honest, funny movie.
And you did. And
Thanks.
I think you balanced those things very, very well.
Thank you.
It was wild to me thinking that, you know, before this year with your film and with Fire Island, the last studio-released comedy with gay leads, I believe, was In and Out, which premiered at, I believe. If I messed that up, I'm sorry.
No. I know. I'm thinking you're right, but I made that face because In and Out was 1997.
Premiered at this festival 25 years ago, I believe today.
Wow.
Which is wild. And I feel like that's like a, you know, the fact that Bros is tonight.
That's actually amazing. I didn't realize that. And I love In and Out.
Me too.
The next movie I'm writing is with Paul Rudnick, who wrote In and Out. And I love Paul. But again, even In and Out, and I actually really like In and Out. I haven't seen it in many years, but I remember loving it. But even in and Out, you know, our story in that movie is being, played by a straight actor, Kevin Kline, and who directed it and out?
Frank Oz.
And so a lot of the creative forces behind that movie, except for Paul, who's the writer, of course, who is gay, were straight.
Yeah.
And so, and I like that movie, but I think what's nice about Bros is that we're getting to tell our own stories, we're getting control over our own narrative, and we're getting paid. There's that too.
Yeah.
That's a real life thing. Who is being rewarded for telling our stories, and it's often been straight men.
Yeah. Well, I'm so pleased that, all those years ago you were who you were, and now it's paying off with this.
Thank you.
Congratulations. The film's amazing. Please go see Bros when it's released in theaters on September 30th. Thanks so much for chatting with me, Billy.
Thanks for having me. You're great. You know your shit. I can't believe that In-N-Out thing.